ability to understand how it works, to understand how it works.
Q-tape. Possibilities Network. And 3, 2, 1. Live from Indianapolis, Indiana, this is the iPad Possibilities Show. With your host, Tim Chapman.
Welcome to the iPad Possibilities Podcast, episode number 53, an iPad for Dad. Welcome, and today is the live episode that we record every Sunday night. Today is Father's Day, June 20th here, and I'm here with John Finnan. How are you doing today, John?
Good, Tim. And how are you today?
Great. A little bit tired. Yesterday was a full day. I was awake for 23 hours, driving back and forth between Ohio and Indy. But fun day, great day, very productive over at PodCamp, Ohio.
And the show was good?
Yeah, show as well. Very good. We discussed basically how to put on a podcast on the iPad alone. So that show will be rebroadcasting in the feed, probably the Wednesday, Thursday show, and I might do an extra show as well. But look for that. It's a joint show I did with the iPad show over there. And yeah, it was a good time. So.
Very good. Very good.
So today is Father's Day, and I'm glad you can be here and discussing basically iPads and dads and how dads can use them, as a parenting tool. So that's kind of the topic of the day. There wasn't much news that went on. The biggest thing I could think of that's on the show notes is that I discovered today is the Find My iPhone app is actually universal. So it's pretty helpful. If you have an iPhone that's lost, you can use your iPad with that app to find it now. So
yeah, that's really a cool thing. I, of course, wish I had had that a few weeks back.
Oh yes, an instant. Yeah.
But I at the time I didn't have a 3G iPad, so I probably had to figure out how to get on Wi-Fi at the airport. But yeah, it's certainly it's great that Apple's finally recognized the fact that we want to use iPhones to find other iPhones as well as iPads to find iPhones and.
I love it. If you only have one iPhone, it's like I got the app to find my iPhone. Oh no, it's lost.
Yeah, and you think about if I had my phone, I could call somebody and ask them to find my phone. But you don't have a phone, so you really need to have two devices. So maybe Apple should start using that as a kind of a ad thing. Everybody with an iPhone needs to have an iPad so that they can find their lost iPhone.
Yeah, I think it's. I didn't notice it until today. It was actually universal. I thought it was just an iPhone app that you upload or whatever.
Yeah, it even works on iPod Touches. I noticed that too. So
that's true.
As long as you have another iOS device that.
Yeah, but at this point, I guess they assume everyone has like 50 of them.
Yeah. Well, and that's not probably too far off for most of us. So.
Yeah, I'm counting 4 or 5.
Yep.
So I think that was the biggest piece of news. Did you catch anything that happened this week other than that?
No, not a whole lot. Although, I think there's a number of people anticipating tomorrow when the iOS 4 is original released into everybody's hands.
Yep. Multitasking apps have been rolling out slowly. We're still waiting on the biggies like Skype and Pandora, but a couple have been rolling out, which has been pretty cool for the people that have the OS 4 on it already.
Yeah. I know as a developer, I just installed it this last week, and I'm pretty jazzed about it. Although I have noticed that it does, your battery does go down a little bit more than previously when you have some apps that are in the background. But it's great to be able to be in the middle of like an email and need to look up something on the web and instantly get back to email and not have to like wait through the process of quitting and starting and quitting and starting. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I've noticed the way they handled is extremely well, because I've had instances where on my iPod Touch I run out of memory, it would feel like, but the audio just simply stutters to fix everything. It doesn't crash anything, which is really impressive, because if you're a jailbreaker on the iPad, you'll know it'll just crash if it's not working.
Yeah.
So they've handled it really well. Which
Yeah, and I think it's a good increase in capabilities for the iPhone, and I can't wait for it to be coming to the iPad.
Yeah,
Certainly.
One less reason the jailbreak once it gets rolled out there.
Yeah, I mean, if I could just get the folders, would be a useful thing for me. I mean, I haven't filled up all the screens of my iPad yet, but I certainly don't. I'd like to get all my different apps that go together, so I don't have to like go from one end all the way to the other to get to a particular app.
Yeah, organization is just a big thing. When folders come out, it's going to be great. Right now, I've got InfiniBoard installed, and that's been a godsend just to organize these and have room for them all, because I would have not had room for them. I think I have 1.5 worth of iPad apps on here. And it's been a pretty fantastic app for kind of a folder replacement, and after I actually did a restore, it's somehow in that memory and put all the apps back where they're supposed to go with InfiniBoard. So it's there's some solutions for jailbreaking in the meantime, but it'll be exciting when that comes out. Let's see if they add anything else by fall.
Yeah.
So, yeah, OS 4 is coming out tomorrow. Just watch out for it in iTunes, or wait a couple of days. Make sure their servers can download it and everything if it's a phone. iPod Touch is a little less of a worry there. But, yeah, look for it. And with that said, I think we should just roll right into some different applications and ways you can use your iPad as a father. And the first big way I thought of is entertaining your children. The iPad has become a great kids toy with all the apps available for it. I was talking with Steve over at the iPad show at PodCamp, and he mentioned his 3-year-old understands Plants vs. Zombies and plays it all the time. That just blew my mind. It's like, Plants vs. Zombies, a 3-year-old? Yeah. So that's one app that I wanted to point out. Do you have any that come to mind?
Well, there are a lot of the games are just phenomenal for kids. Anything that is super hands-on and not necessarily too intellectual are good for the little kids. I wouldn't give them the racing game or anything where they have to like move the iPad around a lot, but anything with their fingers, art programs, painting, drawing, that kind of stuff, are certainly all good things. And it was pretty amazing. The first when I first got the iPad, I was over a friend's house, and they have a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old, and I fired up. It was actually it was an iPhone game, so I just doubled it, and they were just into it immediately. It was a very simple game. I can't remember the name of it, but it's Castle Quest or something like that. It's one of those deals where you have to. Anyway, I can't remember the name. Sorry, but it's one of those things where you use your finger and you pick up guys and throw them away and attack them and they just really got into it. And the great thing is the iPad is very rugged, right? I mean, unless they're going to pick it up and with all their little strength heave it into the floor, the hard floor or something, they're probably not going to hurt it too much. And that's a great thing.
Yeah, it is. With laptops, that's like, ooh, they're gonna get the keys all sticky or whatever, or get the screen all messed up. And the iPad's meant to be touched, and if the screen's sticky, you can simply clean it off. It's not gonna ruin any hardware. I mean, to an extent, right?
Yeah. Well, and even the fact that it's, and granted there is a big huge piece of glass in it, but it's pretty resilient, and it's got the unibody
to dropping, right? Yeah.
Right, unibody aluminum, and it doesn't have things that are protruding. It's got a couple of switches, but for the most part, those aren't going to break off if they get, something gets jammed up next to them or something. So, yeah, it does get to be a good kid thing. And obviously, any of the video things, Netflix, Air Video, anything that you can play video on it, all good stuff for kids.
And one cool thing, some of the book apps like Toy Story Alice, Dr. Seuss apps, some of those actually have, when you hit the play through without interacting with the screen, so it'll just read the story to them and kind of set them through the animations, whatever. Some of those have it set up so if you touch the screen, it doesn't do anything. So the kid can't mess it up. The only way you exit out is by hitting the home key. So some of the apps are really designed smartly for kids who might touch it and mess it up on accident.
Yeah.
Which is, it was pretty cool when I was looking through those. Another app I've talked about in the past is Magic Piano. And even at like a 1-year-old age, I was able to demonstrate you touch the screen, it makes a sound, and it shows you where you're touching with a little light behind your finger, and a young kid can instantly learn that and just be, playing for hours, the Magic Piano, which is pretty cool experience to watch happen.
Yeah, another thing is if you have several kids, one thing is you might want to look at the different drawing apps or things that have the video out, where you can actually have, the kids can share it one at a time and play it, but the other kids can be entertained by looking at the big screen and don't all have to crowd around the iPad. So
yeah. Well, cool. Can you think of any other apps to kind of entertain children? We cover the big ones: books, games, and video.
Yeah, no, that's all good stuff for
and
kids.
And drawing, of course, yeah.
Yep.
So beyond that, dads have apps that they want for themselves too. So one app I thought of is simple GPS, Copilot Live HD. It's a beautiful navigation app. Do you have any in mind besides navigation? What kind of apps can you think of?
I use on the iPhone Navigon, and I haven't got my 3G iPad yet, so I haven't used it on the iPad. But Navigon, I think, is a really great one.
Yeah, I actually, since I work with that device, I have access to Navigon as well now, and I found it to be much more stable than the TomTom as far as making sure it doesn't crash on me. I've been having some problems with that recently. And the interface is wonderful and all of that, but I found on the iPad, the TomTom app just blown up, works really well on the 3G iPad, and been very impressed with just navigation. Works really well. And a couple other apps I was thinking of. Last week we talked about cooking, or the week before, and dads like to cook, so pretty much anything we talked about in that episode I'd check out, and I think that'd be good for dads to use.
Yep, particularly barbecuing, right?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Summertime.
Yep. And beyond that, I mean, it's every person's different, right? So it's kind of hard to say every dad should probably check out these apps, but there's a lot of good sporting apps, MLB at Bat, Score Center HD, and Google Earth now has an iPad app, which is pretty cool. And of course, Early Edition and some other apps. What apps come to mind for you that I haven't been talking about yet?
On the sports theme, golf is something that you tend to think of with Father's Day quite a bit. So I know there were quite a few golfing related apps on the iPhone, but there's a couple that on the iPad. One just from kind of a game simulation kind of thing called Let's Golf HD from Gameloft. Mm-hmm. And that's a little, you play one or two players, and it's a little golfing simulation kind of game, and it's kind of cool.
Yeah, definitely. And I think Oh,
Go
sorry.
ahead. Go ahead.
I think VNC apps are another one that I know my own dad said when his coworker got an iPad and showed off VNC app, that just wowed him. It's like, wow, that's just incredible. I can access my Mac or Windows machine from anywhere now.
Yeah.
So, yep. Go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, that's a very cool thing. For fathers is a way to maybe do some work remotely and spend more time with family. So that's a good thing.
Yeah. And I mean, there's a lot more picture frames. Obviously, if you want to watch have your kids up on their picture frame or whatever, but those are the ones that really came to mind for me. Of course, if dads like to read books on iPad, of course those would apply. But I tried to get a grasp on what this whole subject would be about because every dad's different, every person's different. So it's kind of hard to come up with a set of apps that would apply. And can you think of any other applications, not apps, but just ways dads can use iPads, kind of be a better dad or use like that?
Well, one thing that maybe the iPad is going to do, and we've talked about this before on the show, is really bring gaming back into the mainstream. Kind of board gaming, revitalizing gaming, and I think that dads and families can maybe revitalize the idea of hanging around the table and playing some games together, and so that's one thing that dads should look for, or maybe families buying for dads should look for, is what kind of games can they get to play as a family on the iPad.
Yeah, definitely, and it should be exciting to see what other board games make their way to the iPad. I think it's there's a lot of good ones out there, but I think there's a lot more to come still. So that should be exciting to see what happens as far as board game development and kind of gathering around the iPad and then just playing games off of it, whether it be card games or board games or whatever it is.
Yep, definitely.
I know my dad was playing around with the iPad earlier and came across the Apple Poker app that they came out when the iPhone initially was released. He blew it up, and he launched it and started playing around with it. I said, "Hey, Dad, exit the app, reopen it, and let's play a game of poker." Because I had my iPod Touch with that app on it, and we started playing poker just over Bluetooth or whatever in the family room, and that's something we've never done before with the iPhone or whatever. So it was pretty cool. So I think there's a lot of ways that dads can use iPads. So that's I guess that kind of wraps it up. This is gonna be kind of a shorter episode. We'll have longer time episodes in the future, of course, but I can't really think of much else to say for the dad episode. So do you have anything else you want to close with here before we get the picks and all that?
Just all those fathers out there, have a good Father's Day.
Yeah, definitely. So before we get the picks, I want to just let everyone know how to send feedback to us. First off, you can call in at 209-542-iPad and email in at iPadPossibilities@gmail.com. And I do read every email and respond as quickly as I can. So send them in, and we'd love to hear feedback. What kind of things would you like to have us cover? So just send it in. That'd be greatly appreciated. So with that said, let's get on to our picks. John, do you have any picks, or do you want me to go first here?
No, I can go, Tim.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah, I'm kind of an amateur photographer, and so I've been looking at some of the photography apps, and there's several for the iPhone that haven't really come over to the iPad yet. So I'm kind of like resisting doing anything with those on the iPad, just because I don't think they might be universal apps, but they might also come up with a iPad specific version. So I haven't really looked at the ones that are still strictly iPhone. But there's a couple that caught my eye this last week that I want to talk about. One is called Color Splash, and this does have an iPhone version, but I picked up the iPad version. And Color Splash is it's a neat little application that I'm sure that everybody's seen these effects with photos where you have, a black and white photo, but one part is in color, and it really pulls out that particular part. So Color Splash is a way to do that, and it's really intuitive because you're just using your finger. So, essentially what you do is you bring your photo into it, turn it into a black and white photo, and then you can use your finger and different adjustments within the product to recolorize parts of the photo. And I've tried this once or twice in a Photoshop on the Mac, and it works well, but with a mouse it's got a little less control than you would really like.
Right. And
even though the finger needs to be your finger's kind of fairly big, this thing is much more intuitive and seems to work pretty well. So I would recommend that. It's I forget how much it was.
It's $2.
Yeah, it was a very expensive thing.
Yeah, because that's something I think would be very cool because you can emphasize different parts of the picture that just stand out, and yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, so another one that I am taking a look at, I have not really gotten into it yet, is called Retouch HD, and again, it's was an iPhone app, and now it has a iPad capability, and that's more of a generic kind of photo retouching thing, and I'm really trying to explore what you're capable of doing on an iPad, as far as photo retouching and doing different things. So that's one that seems to have some promise.
Very cool. Yeah, I think photos are going to be huge as more apps come out. Except with that camera connection kit, it'll be interesting to see if will there be apps that can potentially replace a Photoshop for many. So that'll be just interesting to see what happens with this whole industry as we move to the iPad.
Yeah, definitely.
So with that said, I'd like to move on to my pick here, and it's a pretty fun game. It's Foosball HD. It is $3 in the App Store, and it is, as you expect, either one player or two player here. You just control your little foosball guys as you typically do. Controlling is pretty intuitive. Takes a little while to make sure you can grasp the people correctly, and you can spin even though it's technically illegal and all that stuff. But very fun game, and it doesn't seem to interact with moving the iPad around, so there's no tilting or anything. But it's a fun game. If you like foosball and people are in a soccer mood, I haven't watched the World Cup, but other people do and all that. So Foosball HD, it's $3, and it's a great little game. Either one player or two players. So.
Okay, so that was one question I had for you, was whether you could play two players. So that's cool.
You can. Yep.
My other question for you is: have you been able to get the ball stuck in between the players and unreachable, like a real foosball table?
No, I don't get stuck. And I guess you do if you get people around it enough. You could do 4 players, right? Because if you're in the 2-player mode, you're gonna have each person on a different guy to make it a little bit easier to navigate through. So potentially 4 players if you can fit them all around the iPad. So yeah. So
it'll register 4 different fingers.
Actually you can do 3 at the same time. Yeah. Yep. Because the iPad, evidently, if you can use all 10 fingers, it's the iPhone. I guess you get 6 or 7.
It's programmer dependent upon how many fingers that they're really going to deal with on the screen. So while the iPad will take 10 fingers and the iPhone 6, if the programmer's not looking for that number of inputs, then it doesn't do you any good.
Yeah.
So,
the iPhone with 10 fingers, I mean, I'm trying to do this now. There's just not room for it.
No.
Yeah.
But but I mean, even 3 or 4 or 5 fingers, it really is dependent upon the programmer to really be looking for that number of inputs and doing something different with each one. So, that was my only question about the foosball game there.
Yeah, I haven't tried it in 2-player mode to see if all 6 would register. I would imagine they would. So, yeah. So, any final thoughts before we kind of take off here today?
No. I think we had a quick Father's Day episode, and that'll be good. We'll let Father get back to doing stuff with us.
Yep. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the show before we recorded, I'm working with the iPad show to put together a iPad Roundtable podcast that joins together a bunch of the different iPad shows out there. And that should be launched in a couple weeks here, hopefully, if all goes to plan. And that should be a lot of fun, and I'd love to have you on that show as well.
That'd be great.
And in the meantime, people can find you on Twitter at jfinnan. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, awesome. And you can find me on Twitter. I am TCHATEN, and I am at thepossibilitiesnetwork.com. And if you want to support the show, there's just a couple ways to do that. First off, the premium podcast is a great way to do that. It's $2 a month, and with that, you get the shows Monday, Wednesday, Friday, ad-free versions of the show. You get notified of free application promos before anyone else. So lots of great things. Check it out at thepossibilitiesnetwork.com. You can also purchase the iPad Possibilities podcast app in the App Store for $2.99 to get the shows Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, as well as some video episodes. And finally, you can simply just review and rate the show on iTunes. Totally free, but helps us out in a big, big way. So that's how you can support this show. And with that said, until the Wednesday, Thursday episode, this is Tim and John with the iPad Possibilities podcast.